Hello guys, this is the Purrely guy. I am the person you saw playing in the feature match at YCS Lyon. I want to show my list because I think I had a very good list for the tier matchup and the Castilla matchup. Unfortunately, I went X2, X4 drop because I only played one tier and one Castilla. So most of the cards I was playing didn't really do enough against rogue decks, and yeah, unfortunately against Plunder you have a hard time. But let's go up with the deck profile. For monsters, of course, you play the 3 of Purrely. It's the main core card of the deck, and you can't really play less than that. When it's normal special summoned, you can excavate 3 cards from the top of your deck, and then you can add any spell or trap that was excavated. And then the second effect is you can XYZ summon by revealing a spell in hand that is mentioned in one of the XYZs. I can show the interaction later. I played 2 sphere modes. The deck plays both a lot of going second cards as well as floodgates. Sphere mode was especially good in this deck because it has 3 cards, so it's better than Lava Golem against Sprite. It's good against Castilla when it's blind because they usually end on 3 things if they don't see it. And I couldn't really fit more copies because you can't really play a lot of monsters in the deck if you want to end on Noir turn 1. And then I played 6 shufflers. The shufflers had several different functions. One of them was the deck doesn't really have a normal summon apart from Purrely, and most of the time you're just bringing it out with spells if you don't draw it. So I wanted to have cards that let me have a normal summon that I can target with Purrely Delicious Memory, which is important to have a monster in field for it. And they also enable you to do some rank 4 plays, which are really good against tiers, such as summoning Baguska and then having a shuffler already in graveyard if you open multiple copies of it. When it comes to the Purrely spells, I played, of course, a playset of each quick play and My Friend Purrely. My Friend Purrely lets you pay 500 and then you reveal 3 Purrely cards and the opponent pick a random one. Usually you reveal 3 of the same so you can decide whatever you're adding that you are missing in your hand or you need for the specific situation. But it also offers follow-up because if a XYZ leaves the field, you can target 3 of them with different names and then you can add them back to your hand. So in the grind game it helps a lot. Then there is the quick plays, 3 Purrely Pretty Memory. This one is the better one out of all of them, I would say, because it doesn't require you to have any card on field in order to activate it. Both you and the opponent gain 1000, and then as all the other cards do, you can discard a card after you resolve the first effects and then special summon a Purrely from deck. Discarding is not for cost, it's for effect, so can have some synergy with like the element cards or whatever you want it to do. And then we have Delicious Memory. It targets one monster in field and it cannot be destroyed by battle until the end of the opponent's next turn. And then Purrely Pretty Memory, which targets a card on field, actually chooses a card on field, and it cannot be destroyed 1 time by battle or card effects until the end of the opponent's next turn. They all 3 have different effects that happen when they're attached to XYZs. Purrely Pretty Memory lets you send for cost a card you have on field and then target a card your opponent has and attach it to your XYZ. This one makes the XYZ it is attached to gain 300 attack and defense for each material it has, and if you have multiple cost base of it, it stacks. So if you have, for example, 3 copies attached, then it's gonna gain 900 attack and defense for each material. And then this one lets you attack with what it is attached monsters like 1 time extra per copy it is attached. So these were the quick plays I was playing. Of course you max out on all of them because you want to maximize the chance of hitting with Purrely. And some cool interaction can be, for example, Happy Memory is very good against tier because you can make your your cards not be able to be popped by Purrely, so your floodgates or also your XYZ in some instances. And then I played one of the field spell because when you summon Noir against tier, the main way they beat you is by decking you out. And I wanted one extra card that would let me make Noir gain more materials. So at some point I would be able to do a big push because you can still have it unaffected with 5 or more materials and be able to use the effect several times. When it comes to the non-engine cards, I played 3 Prosperity. This card is very important right now because you need to fill up your grave with spells to attach with Plump. And it lets you basically find the missing piece to your hand. So if you open well enough, then you can just look for floodgates or other cards to strengthen your end board or maybe have an easier time summoning Noir. I played 1 Change of Heart and 1 Mind Control. The deck plays a lot of going second cards because in a meta where Castir and Tier both are there, you need a lot of cards to push, especially in this deck where the engine doesn't really push that much. And since I don't play a side engine that kind of works by itself, I needed to put a lot of going second cards or non-engine that helps the rest. I played 3 Book of Eclipse. Yeah, same reason as these pretty much. But also it's important because one of the win cons of the deck is decking out, and this card lets you deck out your opponent faster. It happens especially in the tier matchup where when you get to very close to 0 cards, you can use this to deck them out pretty much. I played 3 Dimensional Fissures. The deck pretty much isn't affected by this at all. It really helps against tier going first by not losing from Havnis and Kelbeck or just them milling very well. And it doesn't really matter because usually this is under AXYZ, so it's detached as a material and therefore is not sent to graveyard. And then I play 6 Traps, which are 3 Rivalry. It serves around the same purpose as this, in improving your tier matchup, but just being good overall. I expected a lot of people on being on Lava Golem, Sphere modes and things like that. And sometimes you cannot have only one monster in field because you don't hit off your Purrely, so you need to resolve more cards or to fill up your graveyard. And this prevents you from getting Lava Golem or Sphere moded, which is very important because even though you have my Purrely friend, you might get OTK'd in the same turn. And it really shuts down tier, which was something that I wanted to prepare, especially with the deck list. And then I played 3 Evenly Matched in the main. So this card is especially good because most of the tier deck lists don't include Crime in the main deck, and therefore you have a card that basically helps you stabilize the game. And it doesn't really matter if you open it going first because you always need cards to discard from the rest, from the quick plays, so you can summon Noir. So it doesn't really matter if you open it going first. And that was the main deck. Now let's go for the extra deck. So I played 2 Noir. You need the second one because of Castir, of course. If they banish the only copy you have, then yeah, you cannot basically access your main win con. This card is the main boss monster. If it has 5 or more material, it can basically become unaffected by any activated effects. So Tier and Castir have a very hard time outing it because they don't really have things that can out a big body, and this usually has at least 1 Delicious Memory attached, so it becomes 46 defense. And then not once per turn, if it has Purrely, it becomes quick effect. You can detach 2 and then target a card in field or graveyard and then put it at the bottom of the opponent deck. Most of the time you try to just end on this and then you can either deck out the opponent or like sometimes like they play in a weird way and then they notice they cannot really out it and then they start just walling up and then you can switch it to attack and then start attacking. The other big one I play is 1 Happiness. This card doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it's usually because you are trying to kill the opponent that turn. It's very good in grind games because it helps you push. Its effect is basically you can detach 1 and it basically negates all the monsters your opponent controls on field. If it has Purrely, then the opponent cannot cannot chain anything to this. And then the second effect is anytime it attacks an opponent monster, you deal 1500 to the opponent. So not only becomes huge and usually can attack more than once, but it also does burn damage. 2 copies of Plump. This is probably the most important one for going first and accessing Noir. It can basically attach 2 spells or traps from the graveyard. So usually you make this become a 4 material, and then you just need 1 more quick play to attach to it in order to make it 5 and then summon Noir. It has a second effect which comes up, which is thrice per turn you attach a quick play, and then you can also banish a monster on field, which also comes up. And if you have Delicious Memory attached to it, which is the one used to summon it with Purrely, the effect of attach from graveyard becomes a quick effect. Then I played 2 Happiness. This is probably the best going second name out of them all, because it lets you pretty much have a XYZ with 5 materials very easily, and you can attack several things and out boards, and after you have outed them you can just go into Noir, and the opponent usually is on so little resources that they cannot really deal with it. Then I played 1 Beauty. Only 1 Beauty because it doesn't really matter against Kashtira in the sense that they won't hit this because they have other priorities in hitting with Diablosis. And but it's very good at going first, especially when you know for sure that you won't have access to Noir, and therefore you need to like just end on this and maybe with like a floodgate or 2, and then try to go from there. Then I played 1 Kashtira Risard. Because I played Talents and Change of Art and Mind Control, I wanted to have this card because I think it really helps against Kashtira. When they just trigger their Shangri-La, you can just take the whatever they have and then summon this over it. And it's a big body, you can make Zeus with it, and just they don't get back their stuff. I played 1 Codebreaker's Wordsman. This was because of Baguska. I was running wild in the format and you need out to it. Because the whole deck is XYZs, and also sometimes you can get into a checkmate situation where you have this on field, but because it's affected still by Baguska, you can't really kill them, you can't really do them anything, and this doesn't have any issue with Saliak or any negation, just outs Baguska. Then I played Tulingo Rebo. I was expecting a good amount of people to be on the Ibli package with Kashtira, and this deck kind of has a hard time with it. So I decided to play 2 copies of it because the deck also has the space for it. Then I played 1 Baguska because it's very good with the shufflers. Sometimes if you have enough cards, you can just add the second shuffler with Prosperity and then go for this if you can keep playing after it. And then 2 Zeuses, of course. You can usually make a 4 material Zeus, if not 6. And you need to play 2 because of course Diablosis is a card. Hope everything was clear with the extra deck as well. Then when it comes to the side deck, I made some specific decisions. So I played Cosmic. I was expecting some Runic decks and also some Labyrinth, and this card kind of covers, like helps you with both. This deck wasn't really built around those matchups, and this card would really help with them. It's also 1 card that can also kind of work with against Flu, which is one of the worst matchups you have. And against here you can play it to either Salic or Purrely or Scream, which they usually use to deck you out, or like get into like this weird grind game where they can't out your Noir, so they try to deck you out as quick as possible, and this kind of helps against Purrely, and you can just set your floodgates and everything. Then I played 3 Lava Golem. I wanted to have more cards against Kashtira. This can also be side against like Sprite or just anything really. And yeah, some matchups have like the shufflers aren't really great in them, so you can just side them out for this. You can also sometimes give it to the opponent, and then they have to out it on their own. Otherwise, they will probably lose because you have Noir on field. They can't beat over it, so they just lose 1,000 every turn. Then I played 3 Shifters. The deck can play under Shifter pretty well, especially if you open Purrely or a way into Purrely that doesn't require you to discard cards. I needed more cards against Tier. This card is very good against them, both going first, going second, and against other matchups. So must play. It doesn't really matter if you open in the grind game, because usually you just discard your cards for the quick plays, so it doesn't really matter. Then I played 2 talents. Didn't want to play 3 because I found myself breaking a lot on them, and then because I played Prosperity, I didn't want to open them together very often. It helps against Cashier and everything. Sorry for the announcement. I played the 3rd sphere mode in the side. I didn't really have the space because I was already playing 41, and I also had a lot of issues with just missing with the Purrely by excavating. Happened a lot on stream, happened a lot throughout the whole day. And when it does happen, it hurts a lot because you committed a lot of resources into the Purrely cards, and you can't really recover them. So you want to maximize how much you hit. And then I played 3 Dogwoods. So because nobody knows what the cards do, and because a lot of the time you get into a very long game 1 or game 2 or anything, you end up in time a good amount of the time, and the deck doesn't really have its own tools to win in time. So it's important to play this card so that in game 3, especially close to time, you have a way of not losing, like it happened on stream. Yeah, that's the deck profile. Hope that you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Of course, it will need to be updated after the next ban list. I'll try to see what version is best, and probably upload more content to the channel. Thanks and peace, and Purrely best deck.